Chapter 8. Drayton woke. Turning to his right, he saw Adrianne sitting in a lounge chair at his side. He placed his large hand over hers. She was warm, a feeling lighting through him. A feeling of passion and completeness stirred about his body. "What are you doing here?" "How did?" She placed a finger to his lips. He kissed her finger. "Don't talk." "I've been here all night," she said. "How do you feel?" Adrianne rubbed his arm and then leaned in to kiss his face, but he caught her on the mouth. He moaned with complete satisfaction. Looking up at her, he broke into a smile. He was so attractive when he smiled. He had a wonderful wide mouth, showing his beautiful white canines. Adrianne thought, if only Wilder would smile more often. But Wilder had the burden of king. As the alpha over all alphas, his responsibilities were far-reaching and lay on his conscience every day. Drayton and Lysel could afford to smile and appease Adrianne's every wish, but not Wilder. Wilder wanted to be just another werewolf in love, but he couldn't afford to be that werewolf. His time wasn't his own, much like any important man with responsibilities, and lives would be affected by his decisions. "Do you know how long I've been waiting to kiss you and hold you in my arms?" Drayton said. "Not as long as I've been waiting to tell you something," Adrianne said, smiling down at him. Drayton sat up impatiently, his eyes sparkling with renewed life in the well-lit room. He didn't know what to think, but he was eager to hear what Adrianne had to say. He glanced up at her with a raised eyebrow, still holding his wonderful signature smile. "You don't have to say anything. I will forgive you whatever it is that was done to you." Adrianne didn't react. She was aware of what all of her werewolves thought. How could they not think that Bane had done his worst by her? Adrianne kept her composure and said, "I know you're not, and nothing was done to me. Please believe me, Bane didn't touch me. He threatened, but made no attempt to harm me in any way." Drayton tightened his hand over hers and continued, "I'm not like Lysel and Wilder." When Lysel heard his name, his eyes opened. "I heard that. Of course you're not like me. I'm handsome, and I have a bigger." Adrianne cut him off. "None of that, Lysel, not now. You should rest. I'm talking to Drayton, and I have something important to tell him. If you want to hear it, you will have to cease with your babbling." "Well, what do you have to tell him?" "I'm all ears," Lysel said, trying to maneuver around to see Adrianne. "You've done something to your hair. Your face looks different. Thin but beautiful as ever." Adrianne appreciated Lysel's charm, especially since she uncovered that part of his personality and grew to understand him. He had always been a ladies' man or werewolf. Now he was devoted to her, and his wolf days were over. He had proved to her that it was only her, his sons and pack that mattered in his life. Turning to Drayton, she said with a flash of a bright smile, "I'm going to have Drayton's pups." She placed her hand on her stomach and took his hand and placed it over hers. "No way," Lysel barked in disbelief, his tone playful. "Shut up, Lysel," Drayton said, holding onto Adrianne's hand. He placed his other hand over her stomach. He could feel the life growing inside of her. Drayton glanced up at Adrianne, and Lysel was ready to answer Drayton when Adrianne cut a disapproving glance his way. They knew how jealous Lysel had become since she gave birth. However, Lysel knew that she wasn't just his, and the only way he could have her was to acknowledge and share her with Wilder and Drayton, but it wouldn't stop him from bragging. "You can be sure that she won't have as many pups for you as she had for me. 6 pups. Do you hear that? And all males. Let's see you top that, Drayton." Everything with Lysel was a challenge and a rivalry. "I don't care if it's only one child. I'd love Adrianne even if she had none." Another smile, and he looked her in the eyes. "That means if it's only one, I can try over and over for more next year. I'm taking a rest after they're born, and we have that honeymoon we didn't get to finish. I want to go back to Hawaii, or maybe Paris. She leaned over and kissed Drayton on the lips. Then you will be going with me. Just as soon as I can walk, Lysel said, turning with a painful expression on his face. His forehead furrowed as he moved about holding his chest. Adrianne stood and rushed to Lysel and pulled up his blanket to warm him as she looked around, seeing Robert walk into the room. Which won't be for months, Robert said, walking over to Lysel with a needle and administering him a shot of pain medication. Lysel's eyes closed, passing out immediately. Good. That's the only thing that will shut him up. We won't be hearing from him for a while, Drayton said, glancing around the room. Where's Katie? She had the MCAT to take today. She's going to medical school. Robert's tone was that of a proud father. Oh yeah, I remember, Drayton said, a little unsteady. His eyes opening and closing. Get some rest. Tomorrow is your big day. You can sleep in your own bed. On hearing Robert, Drayton's hand went limp and he fell into a deep sleep. Adrianne stood at Drayton's side. Adrianne, I think you need to go in and see to your children. The nurses are exhausted and they may need time off. As soon as Katie is finished with her test, she will be here to help out. You need to get some rest too, Robert said. Adrianne looked up at him. I'm the doctor, so for God's sake listen, will you, Adrianne? She smiled at him because she knew he was right. She hadn't been feeling well because of the unintended trip with Bane and the horrible food she had ingested just to stay alive. It was time she took his advice, so she hurried out and into the house to see to her brood. As she approached the stairs, Wilder and Mina were walking into the house. We have more babies for the nursery. The way it's going, I will have to open up the rooms on the other side of the ranch, Wilder said with a soft, clear voice, letting that substitute for his smile. Wilder. Where have you been? Adrianne rushed to Wilder and held him around his neck, kissing him with a baby in between them. He lovingly embraced her, giving her a deep kiss. Rarely did he do that in the presence of others. This time was different. He was overjoyed to see her, but he knew he had to break the news about Hunter, and because of that, he had a mixture of joy and sadness. Then she turned to Mina. Oh Mina, I never thought I would see you again. I thought the same thing about you, Mina said, looking fatigued and hungry. The women held each other as Wilder called for his house staff to bring the 4 babies to the room. Mina and Adrianne separated, and she rushed to get a better look at Mina's pups. They are so beautiful. We have a house full and a family now. We have a pack now, Wilder said. No one can touch us. Where is Hunter? Adrianne asked, looking around. Where's my firstborn? Wilder's expression had no joy in it. He didn't smile. I have something to tell you, but I need to talk to you alone. Your pilot spoke to me and told me what happened. He said you were bringing Hunter home. Just tell me where my son is. There's no need to talk to me alone. Wilder took Adrianne's hand. He turned to Mina. Mina, take care of your pups. There are things I have to say to Adrianne. Adrianne looked around at Mina as Wilder led her into the library. Walking, she watched Mina, trying to measure her expression. Mina had a look on her face that Adrianne had seen before when they had first confronted Bane. It was a worried look, and she had a way of lowering her eyes when she knew that danger was approaching, or an unpleasant conversation was occurring. It was an avoidance mechanism. Mina lowered her eyes, and Adrianne knew then that it was bad. She turned looking at Wilder as she followed him, and he closed the doors behind him. Sit, Adrianne. I'm not going to sit. That's what doctors say when the prognosis is bad. What is it? And where is Hunter? That's what I have to tell you, but I won't until you sit. He sat down on the large sofa facing the fireplace, then steepled his hands and fingers. She sat unhurriedly beside him. He held her hand. I don't need you to hold my hand like I'm fragile and a child. Is my son dead? Wilder inhaled, closed his eyes and put both hands to his chin, stroking the new growth, trying to avoid the inevitable. In that second it took him to do that, Adrianne died many times inside. Is my son dead? I don't know, Wilder said, shaking his head. What do you mean, you don't know? Adrianne shouted. Bane has him. Then he's not dead. What does he want? Adrianne questioned. Whatever he wants, give it to him, and he won't harm my son, she said. He wants you, Wilder said, his dark blue eyes staring at her. Adrianne's eyes followed around the room, following the flicker of the fire. Her body went limp. She felt like crying, but no tears would come. She felt like screaming, but she couldn't open her mouth to utter a sound. She felt like falling into Wilder's arms for him to tell her she was dreaming, but it wasn't a dream, and she knew it. It was real, and her firstborn was in the hands of a werewolf who wanted to swap her son for her. Maybe I can reason with him, Adrianne whispered, barely opening her mouth. Why do you think you can reason with a werewolf such as Bane? You were in his presence for 2 weeks and you think you know him. You were his hostage and you think you know him. I've known him all his life and he has hated me that much longer. Do you think you will make a difference? He's a killer and a defiler of women. He will do whatever is necessary to achieve his means. No doubt he tried to convince you that he isn't what I say he is. That is not the person I know. No one knows anyone, Adrianne. You don't know me. I'm a killer, but not like Bane. It took you and my sons to change me. Now, because he's holding my son, I will become the killer I never wanted you to know about. I'm going after Bane. I will destroy him. I hope I can bring my son home, but if I know Bane, I would not hold out hope for Hunter coming back to us. On those words, Adrianne fell into Wilder's arms. Her tears held no comfort for her. She cried until Wilder picked her up and brought her to bed. He lay her there and stayed with her until she fell asleep. He pulled up the covers as he watched her resting, and he knew what had to be done. He would drop everything and find Bane or his son's body and bring it back home. A slow descent down the stairs with Wilder measuring his footsteps. He glanced at the foot of the stairs. His eyes caught Robert's figure. I had heard that you brought Mina and my children back. I was just going up to see them. How can I ever thank you? Robert glanced at the grim look on Wilder's face. His eyebrows connected, and his mouth was set in a hard line, staring blankly at Robert. I need you to do one thing for me, Robert. Anything. Take care of my brothers and see to Adrianne. She will need you. If I don't return in a month, I will be dead, and Hunter will be dead as well, but don't say anything to Adrianne. When my brothers are well enough, tell them I won't be coming back. You can tell them yourself. I'm not going to bring that bad news to them. You will come back. Wilder turned, walking away from Robert.